The sky was full of smoke, fire, and falling ships. The war between the humans and the Zellerie had reached its peak. Captain Eli Monroe, a young human soldier, moved carefully through the ruins of the alien city. His gun was loaded, eyes sharp. But his heart was tired. He was not here to fight today. He was looking for survivors. The planet had been declared lost, but Eli couldn't leave without checking one last time. The buildings were broken, their walls black from fire. He stepped over broken metal and ash. Suddenly, he heard a small sound, a whimper, soft like a kitten crying. He turned quickly, his gun raised, behind a broken wall. Under a pile of dust and burned cloth, he saw her, a little alien girl, maybe 5 or 6 human years old. Her skin was pale silver, her hair long and messy like silver threads. Her large eyes glowed faintly in the shadows. She didn't speak, she just stared at him with fear, hands shaking. "Hey." Eli dropped his gun slowly. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't move. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein bar. Unwrapping it slowly, he placed it near her feet. She looked at it, sniffed it like a scared animal. Then, with tiny hands, she grabbed it and ate like she hadn't eaten in days. Eli sat beside her, not too close. He spoke softly while she ate, telling her his name. She didn't answer. When she finally finished the bar, she wiped her mouth and whispered something. It was in broken English, but he understood. "Where is ... Mama?" His heart sank. He had seen what happened to the families here. He couldn't lie. "I don't know," he said quietly. "But you're safe now." She leaned into him slowly, head resting against his arm. She was so light, so small. He put a blanket around her shoulders. After a while, she asked, "You take me home?" Eli smiled a little. "I don't know where your home is." "Little one," she looked up at him again, this time with more courage. "Then, I go with you," he chuckled, surprised by her sudden boldness. "You'll come with me, huh?" he said, smiling. "All right, when you grow up, I'll marry you. Deal?" It was a joke, a silly thing to make her smile, and she did. Her whole face lit up with a small, glowing grin. She touched his hand with her tiny fingers and whispered, "Promise." Eli froze for a second, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, sure," he said, still smiling. "Promise." Later, he found a refugee ship still taking survivors. He handed her to the medic, gave them her name and her file. She looked back at him with wide eyes as the ship doors closed. She waved with her small hand, he waved back. Not knowing that her heart had already chosen him, he never saw her again. Years passed. Eli left the army. The war ended. Peace returned. He moved to a quiet farming colony far from the front lines. He tried to forget the war. He tried to forget the pain. But sometimes, late at night, he remembered the little silver-haired girl. Her glowing eyes, her soft voice, and the silly promise he made. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, someone knocked on his door. Eli opened it, expecting a neighbor, but what he saw made his heart stop. A young woman stood there, tall and elegant. Her skin was pale silver, her hair long and flowing. Her eyes glowed gently in the fading light. She wore clothes that looked royal, strange and beautiful, but her face was familiar. She looked at him and smiled. "You promised," she said softly. "I've come to marry my human." Eli stepped back, stunned. He stared into her glowing eyes. His mind raced. Was this real? Was it her? The joke he made long ago had returned to his doorstep, but this time it was no joke. This time, to his destiny. The girl had no name when she was found, no family, no home, and no one to call her own. But she had one memory, a voice, warm and strong, a promise made under fire and smoke. "You grow up, and I'll marry you." She remembered the words like a song. After Eli handed her to the medics and disappeared into the stars, she was taken to a refugee center on a peaceful moon colony. There she was given a name by the caretakers, Liari, but in her heart she always called herself his girl, the one the human soldier promised. Other children in the center cried for their parents. She didn't cry, she trained every day. While others played, Liari learned to speak better, to fight, to grow strong. She studied human language, culture, and technology because she knew one day she would return to him. The other children teased her. He won't remember you. He was just being nice, but she would simply smile and say, he promised, and in her culture, promises were sacred. Especially promises made to a child in pain. As she grew, so did her name by the time she turned 18 in Earth years. Liari was no longer a forgotten refugee. She had become a respected emissary of peace between humans and her people. Smart, graceful, and calm, but still carrying one goal in her heart. Find him, the human who gave her hope, and ask him to honor the promise. Meanwhile, Eli's life was quiet. He had a small house, a garden, and a pet lizard dog named Buck. People liked him. He was kind, helpful, and polite. But he was always alone. He told himself he preferred the quiet, but deep inside, a part of him felt unfinished. As if something or someone was still waiting for him. He had dreams sometimes, of glowing eyes, small hands, soft voices, but they faded with the morning sun. He never truly remembered. Until she knocked on his door. Now, Liari sat across from him in his small kitchen, still dressed in elegant robes that shimmered like starlight. She sipped tea politely, eyes never leaving his face. Eli was still in shock. He kept glancing at her, trying to connect the young child he once held to this tall, graceful woman. So, he said slowly, voice unsure, you, ... really came back for that? Liari nodded. You promised, she said gently, and I waited. Eli rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't think you'd take it seriously. I did. She replied, because you were the only one who made me feel safe, who made me feel seen. Her voice didn't tremble. She wasn't begging. She was stating her truth. You're serious about this? He asked again. You want to marry me? She looked at him, eyes glowing softly. Yes, she said, but not because I need protection anymore. I came because I chose you, and I wanted to know if you could ever choose me too. Eli didn't know what to say. He felt guilt. He didn't remember her face fully, only the memory of that one moment. But here she was, grown and proud. Offering him a second chance, Liari stood up slowly. I understand if you say no in my culture. A child's promise is sacred, but you're not bound by our law. You're free to live your life. She gave a soft smile. I only came to let you know I never forgot you. She turned to leave, but just as she reached the door, Eli spoke. Wait, he said. I don't remember your name, but I remember your eyes. She turned back, surprised, and I remember how you held my hand. How you smiled after eating that bar, he added. You were just a kid. I thought I'd never see you again. He stepped closer, but here you are. She nodded once. Quietly, can we take this slow? He asked. I want to know who you've become. Her smile returned, this time softer, warmer. I would like that, she said, and just like that, a new chapter began. Not a joke, not a vow, but something real. Something chosen. The little girl who once hid behind rubble was now standing tall, and the man who once made her smile was now searching for one himself. Eli thought things would slow down. He thought he could take time to get to know Liari again, learn who she had become. But he was wrong. The very next morning, 3 alien ships landed outside his quiet farming colony. Elegant, smooth, glowing. With soft purple lights, they didn't come with weapons, but with something much more dangerous. Officials, alien guards stepped out first, tall and serious. dressed in ceremonial armor, behind them. A cloaked figure approached with slow, royal steps. Eli stood in front of his house, confused as Lyeri walked out calmly to meet them. Lady Lyeri of the First Moon. The cloaked figure bowed. "We received your declaration. Your chosen mate has been found." Eli blinked. "Wait, what?" "Mate," he asked, turning to Lyari. She looked at him gently. "They've come to witness your agreement. You spoke a vow to me," she said, "and by my people's law, you have now entered the sacred bonding process." Eli felt the blood leave his face. "I didn't agree to anything official, did I?" The cloaked official raised a hand, revealing a glowing crystal device. From it, a tiny hologram appeared, showing a grainy but clear recording from years ago. A young, human voice saying, "All right, when you grow up, I'll marry you, deal?" "Yeah, sure, promise." It was his voice, recorded by the refugee med scanner implanted in Lyari's collar when she was rescued. Eli laughed nervously. "That was a joke. I didn't mean for it to be." "Law, but the alien official didn't." "Laugh, in your culture, perhaps," he said, "but in ours, a promise to a child, especially one made in protection and kindness, is a sacred contract. It was recorded, witnessed, and stored in the galactic records." Eli looked to Lyari, stunned. She didn't look angry or demanding. She looked hopeful, and yet careful, like she didn't want to force him. "You still have a choice," she said softly. "Our law binds you only if your heart accepts, but if you walk away, it will be written that I was rejected by my chosen." She lowered her gaze. "It will bring shame and sadness." Eli was quiet for a long moment. "I didn't mean to trap you," he whispered. "You didn't," she said gently. "You saved me." The official spoke again. "If the human wishes to honor the bond, he must pass the joining ritual 3 stages to prove his heart, his intent, and his strength." "And if I fail?" Eli asked. "You are free," the official said, "but the record remains. So does the dishonor." Eli stared at the ground, heart pounding. He didn't want to embarrass Lyari, but he also didn't know if he was ready for something so serious. Then he looked at her. She stood tall, proud but vulnerable too. She wasn't a stranger anymore. She had crossed stars to find him, not to trap him, but to offer something rare. A connection, a second chance. "All right," he said. "Quietly, I'll try. I don't know what the rituals are, but I'll try." Lyari smiled, just a little. Not the smile of victory, but of relief. "Thank you," she said, simply. Later that evening, the officials set up a ceremonial circle outside the village. Other colonists came to watch, curious and whispering. They didn't understand what was happening, but they could tell it was important. Lyari stood beside Eli, dressed in traditional robes now, her hair braided with glowing thread. Eli wore a simple tunic the aliens gave him, marked with her family's symbol. The head official stepped forward. "Stage 1. Heart," he announced. The human must face the memories of the bond he forgot. Suddenly, holograms rose around him, showing scenes from the war. The broken city, the fire, the child hiding under rubble. He watched himself feed her, wrap her in a blanket. He heard her voice again, promise. Eli's eyes grew wet. He didn't remember recording this, but now he could feel it. The moment was real. The pain, the trust. The small fingers clinging to him. He turned to Lyari and whispered, "You held on to this all these years?" She nodded silently, her hands trembling just a little. The official looked at him. "Do you recognize the moment?" "Yes," Eli said quietly, "and I think part of me never truly forgot." The crystal glowed green. Stage 1. Past asterisk. The stars above the colony were calm, but inside Eli's chest, a storm was rising. The first trial had shaken him. Memories he had forgotten came back stronger than ever. Now the second trial, intent, was about to begin. And this one was not about the past. It was about his heart right here. Right now, the ceremonial circle was quiet. Even the watching colonists stood still, sensing something serious was happening. Liari stood to the side, her hands clasped in front of her. She wore a calm expression, but her eyes kept glancing toward Eli. Searching for signs of doubt, the alien official stepped forward again. Stage 2. Intent, he said, voice echoing. In the cool night air, the human must speak truth, with no lies in heart. A glowing sphere rose from the center of the circle, hovering between Eli and Liar. It pulsed gently, like a beating heart. The bond crystal, someone whispered. It reacts to intention. It glows only when the words are honest. Eli looked at it, then at Liar. She met his gaze with quiet strength, but there was also fear there. Carefully hidden, he took a deep breath and stepped closer. His voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. I didn't mean it when I said I'd marry you, he began. Gasps came from the crowd. The crystal flickered, but stayed clear truth. I said it because you were a scared little girl, and I wanted you to feel safe. The crystal pulsed. Gently, still clear. But, he added, stepping closer, I never forgot the feeling I had when I held your hand. When you looked at me like I was the only one who mattered, the crystal began to glow soft blue. I thought it was just a moment, a passing thing, but then you came back, years later, and I realized. You still believed in me. The glow became brighter. I don't know if I deserve that kind of faith, Eli said, voice soft now. But I don't want to walk away from it. He turned to Liari fully now. I want to understand who you are. Now not just the girl I saved, but the woman who came all this way. I don't promise marriage yet, he said honestly. But I promise to walk beside you and mean every step this time. The crystal burst into full blue light, bright and clear like the morning sky. The official raised his hand. Stage 2. Passed, he declared. Cheers and gasps echoed through the crowd, but Liari only smiled, relieved and proud. Later that night, the two sat together outside Eli's home. They didn't speak at first. Buck, Eli's lizard dog, lay between them, happily snoring. Finally, Liari broke the silence. I know that wasn't easy, she said. Eli chuckled. I never thought I'd have to prove my intent to a glowing space rock. She smiled. Softly, in our culture, words are more than sounds. They're paths we walk. Vows we live. Eli nodded. Makes sense now. I just wish I had known back then. Liari looked down, twisting a bracelet on her wrist. There's something else you should know, she said, voice quiet, back on my homeworld. There are others who wanted me to bond with them. Eli looked at her. Others, like suitors. She nodded. Powerful ones. Political families. Royal bloodlines. Let me guess, they weren't thrilled you came back to find a farmer. Eli joked. Liari didn't laugh. They were furious, she said. And one in particular has followed me. Eli sat up straighter. Followed. You, as in he's here. She nodded again. I think he will challenge you during the final stage. Eli raised an eyebrow. Challenge? Like a fight. Liari didn't answer. She simply said, he believes the bond should have been. He'll do anything to stop it. Eli leaned back and sighed. Well, so much for a quiet life. Liari looked at him seriously now. You still have a chance to walk away. If you stay, the next part could be dangerous. He met her eyes. Dangers never scared me, he said. What scares me is the thought of you walking away thinking I didn't care. Her eyes shimmered with emotion. She whispered, then I will stand beside you. No matter what comes next, above them, the stars continued to shine, but somewhere in the dark. Someone else watched, a figure cloaked in shadows, tall and proud, eyes glowing with jealousy, hands clenched with quiet rage. The final stage was coming. And not everyone wanted to see the bond completed. The morning sky over the colony was pale orange. A line of alien banners fluttered gently in the breeze, each marked with ancient symbols of Lieri's people. A circle had been carved into the earth, clean, precise, and glowing faintly with energy. It was the ground for the final trial, the trial of worth. Eli stood at the edge, breathing slowly, his fists slightly clenched. He had passed the first two trials, heart and intent, but this one was different. This one was public, dangerous, and unpredictable. This trial was not just about his feelings. It was about proving through action that he was worthy to stand beside Lieri. In her culture, this final test was sacred, a test of spirit, courage, and honor. Lieri stood nearby, dressed in ceremonial armor. She was silent, eyes calm, but inside, her heart beat fast. Not because she doubted Eli, because she knew who else would appear today. The high speaker of the ceremony stepped forward. "The trial of worth begins," she announced. "The human has agreed to face the three rights: the right of the body, the right of the mind, and the right of the bond." Eli stepped into the circle. "I'm ready," he said, voice firm. "Right one." The body A door opened in the side of a glowing platform. From it stepped a tall, alien male, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark battle robes. His face was sharp, eyes burning with pride and something darker, envy. Lieri froze. It was General Vekthar. The one she feared would come? Challenge accepted. Vekthar said, voice like stone, "I have also claimed her bond years ago. But she chose you," he said, turning to Eli with contempt. "A farmer." "A joke." Eli didn't answer. The speaker raised her hand. "Combat is limited. First to yield or be disarmed." The duel began. Vekthar moved fast, too fast for a man his size. He struck like a storm, testing Eli's defense. Eli dodged, blocked, and stumbled more than once. But he never gave up ground. He had trained as a soldier years ago. But this was different. Vekthar wasn't just attacking his body. He was attacking his right to stand beside Lieri. Eli waited, watching his opponent. Then he saw it. Vekthar relied on brute strength, but left his side open during heavy swings. When the next blow came, Eli stepped in and used the alien's own force to flip him. Vekthar hit the ground hard, his weapons sliding out of reach. The crowd gasped. The speaker raised her hand. "Yield or continue?" she asked. Vekthar growled, stood up, and bowed. "I yield," he said bitterly. Then he looked at Lieri. "I gave you loyalty, and you chose a weakling." She looked back with calm strength. "I chose the one who saw me when I had nothing," she said, "not the one who came only when I had everything." Right to the mind. After the duel, Eli was led into a chamber of mirrors, a place where thoughts were read and illusions tested the soul. He saw himself multiple versions, each whispering, "You don't belong in her world. You were just being nice." She waited for nothing, but then, through the illusions, he saw her, the child he once rescued, the girl who smiled. With crumbs on her lips, the woman who crossed galaxies to find him. "I made a joke," he whispered, "but she turned it into hope. And I won't let that hope die." The illusions cracked. The chamber faded. Right 2. Past. Right 3. The bond back in the circle. Lieri stepped forward. This final rite could not be done with swords or thoughts, only with two hearts. Facing each other without walls, she held out her hand. "If you take my hand," she said, "you accept my path, my people, my world, and me." Eli stepped forward. He didn't need to speak anymore. He simply reached out hand, took her hand. The crystal between them burst into light, not blue, not white gold. The speaker spoke with awe. "The bond is true," she said. "The choice is shared." Cheers erupted from the crowd. Even some of Vekthar's own men nodded in respect. The trial had ended, not with power, but with connection. Liari looked at Eli, her voice soft. "You didn't just pass the trial," she said. "You became part of my story." Eli smiled. "And you became the end of mine, and the start of something better." The stars were quiet again. The trial was over. The lights of the ceremony had dimmed. People had returned to their homes, whispering about the human who passed all 3 rites. Some still doubted, others were impressed, but none could deny what the crystal had shown. The bond was real. Eli sat alone outside his house that night. The wind gentle across the hills. He held a cup of warm tea in his hands. But he hadn't taken a sip. His mind was full, his heart even more so. He had come here to live a quiet life. He never thought a joke made during war would return like this, as a promise, as a path, as a future. The door behind him opened slowly. Lai stepped out, dressed simply now, her ceremonial robes gone. Her long silver hair flowed freely in the night breeze. She sat beside him on the wooden step, not saying a word at first. They sat like that for a while. Not strangers, not lovers, something in between. Something waiting to become more. "You're quiet tonight," Liari said finally, her voice soft. "I'm thinking," Eli replied. "About everything." She looked down at her hands. "I know it all happened fast," she said. "You were pulled into our customs, our laws. You had every reason to walk away." Eli glanced at her. "And yet, I didn't." Liari nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Tomorrow is the final day," she said. "The bond can be sealed or released." Eli took a deep breath. "Tell me what happens if I say no." Liar's voice lowered. "If you walk away, the bond will be broken in front of the council. I'll be marked as unfulfilled, someone who's chosen mate. Rejected them." She paused, then added, "It won't ruin me. I'll still have status, still be respected. But something will be missing." Eli looked at her more carefully now. "You always talk with strength. Like nothing scares you." "I was scared the day you left me behind," she whispered. "But I never let it break me. I waited, because I believed you would remember." Eli turned his head slowly to the stars. "I didn't remember the promise clearly," he admitted, "but I remembered your eyes. And I remembered that I wanted to protect you even if just for a moment." He looked at her again. "Back then, you needed someone. And now, here you are offering everything to someone who wasn't even looking." Liari smiled softly. "You didn't look. But you saw me." Silence returned, soft and full of meaning. Eli stood up, pacing slowly in front of the porch. "What if I say yes?" he asked. "But I don't know how to love someone from another world." Liari stood too, her steps light as feathers. "Then we learn together," she said. "There's no test for love, only time." Eli chuckled slightly. "I thought you'd be offended by my questions." "I'd be more hurt if you had none," she replied. "Doubt is honest. Doubt means you're thinking about more than yourself." They faced each other now. No glowing crystals, no aliens watching, just 2 souls beneath the stars. "Can I ask you something real?" Eli said. She nodded. "If I had never come back for you that day, if I had left you in that rubble, what would have happened?" She looked away, eyes wet but proud. "I would have died," she said softly, "or worse. Lived without hope, but you gave me something more powerful than food or safety. You gave me a reason to grow." Eli's breath caught in his throat. "I didn't know," he whispered. "You didn't have to," she said, stepping close. "You changed me without even realizing it." He reached out slowly and took her hand. "I still don't know what to decide tomorrow," he admitted. "But I want to be sure." Liari leaned her head gently against his chest. Then, "Let tonight be quiet," she said. "No pressure, no rituals, no vows. Just be here with me." Eli nodded, and they sat down again, shoulder to shoulder. Two hearts slowly learning to beat in rhythm, a human, an alien. And a promise that may have started as a joke, but now felt more real than anything either of them had ever known. Morning light touched the rooftops of the colony. The wind carried the sound of chimes and distant birds, but inside Eli's chest, everything was still. It was the final day. The trial was over. The tests had been passed, and now it was time to decide. Would the bond be sealed door broken? Would a promise made in war turn into a future or fade into memory? Eli stood at the mirror, adjusting the ceremonial collar someone had given him. He felt strange dressed in alien silk, his name now known among stars. But more than that, he felt something deeper. Weight, not from fear, but from the value of the choice he was about to make. He thought of Liar, the little girl behind rubble, the warrior who stood tall beside him, the woman who waited years for him to remember a moment that had shaped her whole life. A knock came at the door. It opened gently, and Liari stepped. Inside, she wore white and silver robes, her hair in a braid lined with tiny crystals. But her eyes were not glowing with power today. They were full of softness and something that looked a lot like hope. "Are you ready?" she asked, voice calm but quiet. Eli looked at her. "I don't think anyone's ever really ready for something like this," he said, "but I've made my choice." The ceremonial grounds were filled again, not just with her people, but with humans, two curious colonists who had watched the story unfold. Even General Vekthar stood in the shadows, arms crossed, face unreadable. A platform of light hovered in the center. Two small thrones faced each other, one for her, one for him. This wasn't a wedding, not exactly. It was a bonding confirmation. A moment where both could speak freely, in front of both cultures, and choose together. The speaker raised her voice. "The time has come," she said, "for the chosen to speak their final words." Liari stepped forward first. She stood tall, but her voice was soft. "When I was a child, I was broken, lost, and afraid," she said. "One human changed that, not by power, but by kindness. He made a joke." She smiled gently. "But I believed it because it gave me hope. I came back not to trap him, but to ask, 'Do you still see me?'" Then she stepped back, her gaze falling on Eli. It was his turn now. Eli stepped forward slowly. He looked around, feeling the pressure of every eye on him. But when he looked at Liari, everything else disappeared. "I made a promise without meaning to," he said. It was a small thing, just words, said in a moment of war. He paused, breathing in, but she remembered. And that memory brought her across stars. She stood before me. Not as a child, but as someone who had shaped her life around something I barely remembered. "I didn't mean it then," Eli said honestly, "but I do now." He turned to her fully. "I don't know everything about your world. I don't have royal blood or titles, but I know your heart. I know that you saw me when I had nothing to offer but a smile, and you waited not because you needed saving, but because you believed I could still be the man you remembered." Eli reached out his hand, and now I ask not as a joke, not as a hero. Not because of law, but because I want to walk with you, as your equal, your partner. Your chosen. Liari's hand moved to his slowly, fingers brushing gently against his. Then, she gripped his hand tightly as the bond crystal above them burst into golden flame. The crowd gasped. The speaker raised her staff. "The bond is complete," she said, "by both heart and choice." Cheers filled the air. Some humans clapped. Others just watched in awe among her people. Even the elders bowed their heads with respect. Vekthar turned silently and walked away, his challenge ended, his pride wounded, but his honor intact. Later that evening, under a quiet sky, Eli and Liari sat beside each other in the field. No more trials, no more crowds, just peace. "You still think this all started because of a joke?" she asked with a smile. Eli laughed softly. I think the joke was the only real thing I ever said during that war. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and now? He looked down at her now. I say it again. I choose you, Liari, he said. Not because I have to, but because I want to. And beneath stars older than both their worlds. The human and the alien girl who once ate crumbs in the dark began a life neither of them could have imagined. A life born not from duty, not from law, but from a single, careless promise that turned into something eternal.